Today I'm going to go over my most recent roster that I've been playing a lot, including in my most recent battle report against Dylan. My name is Nate, and welcome to the Gamers Guild. I haven't always gone over every roster that I mess around with and play with because there is always something to try and build around that results in something fun, but also, like many others have mentioned, your roster is something that is constantly changing, and as you try new heroes and villains on the battlefield with new tactic cards and crises, all of it to say, this probably won't be the final look of my Brotherhood roster. But if you are looking for a good starting place for all of your less noble-minded mutants to join forces, you could certainly do worse. With that, let's get into the characters. I have the current 4 members of the Brotherhood with Magneto, Mystique, Toad, and Sabretooth. I also have Taskmaster as an additional affiliated member to help make list building a little bit easier. He and Sabretooth are the most likely to be swapped out once we see more members of the Brotherhood come out, as neither of them directly play to Magneto's or Mystique's leadership abilities, but they do hold down the fort in the time being. The remaining 5 characters I have are Wolverine, Valkyrie, Wasp, Captain Marvel, and Vision. Wolverine is a very aggressive beater that has some great durability to back him up as well, and he's a character that really shines once he has some power on him, and providing that with Magneto's leadership ability just really lets him shine quickly. Valkyrie is in a similar boat as him, just a bit cheaper on threat, but also not as durable. But she does come with a throw, which is really nice for Magneto. Marvel, Wasp, and Vision all bring attack diversity with their energy attacks, which the Brotherhood is severely lacking. And all of these characters have a throw and ways to spend the extra power Magneto can easily give out. So my roster leaves me with 1 2-threat character, 4 3-threat characters, 4 4-threat characters, and Magneto rounding out the top end with a single 6-threat character. And with Toad, Mystique, and Taskmaster all getting to count as affiliated, this group can make sure to bring a leadership ability to any and every threat level. So, speaking of leadership ability, I want to talk about when I want to bring Magneto as the leader, and when Mystique fills that role a little bit better. And for me, and how I built this roster, 4 out of 5 times Magneto is going to be what I want to play. So that 5th option where I don't want to bring Magneto is on any of these spread out objectives like Extremis consoles or Spider Portals. Having 6 threat tied up in a slow moving 50mm base feels bad when he isn't having a major impact on the board as often as possible. We do have tactic cards to help with that, but the long moves of Mystique, Sabretooth, and Wasp, and the charges of Valkyrie and Wolverine are going to be a lot more reliable in those situations. As well, Mystique being able to secure a back point early on that your opponent has to stretch for while you can commit everyone forward is really nice, as it opens up some great turn 1 plays. Everywhere else, Magneto can either influence half of the board strongly, like on a B crisis setup, or if all of it, maybe even if you're playing something like Gamma Shelters. Really, worst case scenario is setting up to play Spider Portals because Mystique's leadership ability is slightly negated, and Magneto doesn't like having to be that spread out. So that's the 10, what about my 8? My restricted tactic cards are Medpack and Field Dressing. Brace may be in the discussion at some point, but since we are not running very many heavy characters, and Magneto should hopefully be tossing most of the heavy terrain on the board before my opponent does, it helps negate the need for it. And Field Dressing can just complicate my opponent's options on any given turn. My other generic use tactic cards are Disarm, Climbing Gear, and No Matter the Cost. And really the only generic use out of all of those is Disarm. If you've been listening to any of my other videos where I talk about tactic cards, you will know about my love of Disarm and its versatility. Being able to reduce the incoming damage from a key character later in the game before they get to activate can ensure you some points or an important activation of your own. Climbing Gear is really just here for Magneto. This allows him to spend 3 power for a free move action basically, which helps negate his one big weakness by getting him into the fray or a free reposition a little bit later on in the game. No Matter the Cost can admittedly be pretty easily used by any one character, but it is here for Wolverine and Sabretooth, who can end up healing at the end of their turn, which helps mitigate the damage taken from using the card in the first place. My last 3 tactic cards are specifically for the affiliation and its leaders. Asteroid M can be well used by Magneto, who needs to get to the other side of the board, but can also be very useful for teleporting a Toad or Mystique to make some bold objective plays. For instance, I had her flip 3 of the 4 traps when playing the Arcade Crisis at the last activation of a round by starting by interacting with one she was already standing next to, teleporting her next to Magneto on the other side of the board in range to interact with another one. Then she moved to that final point, blew up some terrain to daze the enemy who was contesting it, and then finally flipped that last point to my side. So it's earned its spot in the roster for sure. Deception and Magnetic Reflection are my other 2 cards. Deception is almost stable to Mystique with how useful it can be in numerous situations, and Magnetic Reflection being able to be replayable by Magneto, well, as long as he's within the Brotherhood, is crazy, and almost allows for him and his allies to have permanent cover, which really kind of just mitigates some of my worst dice rolls. And finally, for my Crisis cards. For the extracts, I have Hammers, Cubes, and Wakandan Herbs. And then for my secures, I have Arcade's Amusement Park, Infinity Formula, and Extremis consoles. And because I have a roster that can use power very efficiently and quickly, I love giving them that extra bit of power. And so by giving Cubes or the Infinity Formula fit really nicely into that plan. And since I have several physical attacks that scale well with more dice, I went with Wakandan Herbs and Hammers. Mystique's Pistols getting more dice is always going to be good because of the rapid fire, Wolverine and Valkyrie just become a delete button, and Magneto gets rerolls. Yeah, just good things. And Wolverine is oddly enough a good herb carrier with his Berserker Barrage and special charge ability, giving him some extra mobility. I like having Extremis consoles as well for a going wide option for Mystique, especially when playing against a team like the Black Order or the Defenders that likes their teams to stay in close proximity to one another. The final crisis I have is Arcade's Amusement Park, and it's one that lines up with the battlefield into 2 halves. And while the Witness objective lines up like that as well, Arcade's Park will negate the use of Hired Muscle if my opponent has it in their tactic card pool. As well, all of my extracts are purposefully not civilians for that same reason. This one may get swapped out for Gamma Shelters down the road, but as I play more games, we will get more experience with these characters, and we'll learn how to set them best up for success. So, with all of that said and done, this is my current Brotherhood roster. If you have any questions about it or anything else Marvel Crisis Protocol related, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or my email, both of which are down in the description of the video. Also, I want to continue to say thank you to the members of the Guildhall who are supporting the channel through Patreon. Despite everything 2020 has thrown at us all, this has been an incredible blessing and a constant light over these last 5 months. As well, thank you all for watching, subscribing, and everything else, as the channel now has hit the crazy number of 2,000 subscribers. So, seriously, that is not something I had at all expected for this channel to grow in that way, so thank you all for everything you do and provide in this awesome community. And until next time, keep on gaming.